We didn't do the intro. Got to fix that right now. Well, I guess we won't do it. What the heck? All right, so we are here and we are doing our live stream. I wasn't here last week. I had oral surgery a couple days before that and I needed to recover. And I'm still dealing with some health stuff that I can't explain and my doctors can't either, so we'll see what kind of tests come back. In the meantime, I hope I'll be okay. I'm sitting in front of Caitlin's Reef. I cleaned it I cleaned it earlier today. I did a water change last night and it's looking pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with it. So I wanted to sit near an aquarium this time. Last time we were inside the studio. And I had one person specifically say, could you please continue to do all your live streams in front of the reef tank? Thank you very much. So my plan is to flip-flop between the two of them. Someone says they're finally awake for a live. Good morning. That's great. I'm glad you're here. First news, big news is this week, you know, as in a week, MACNA is happening in Wisconsin. If you are not going and you're within driving distance, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. I'm going to highly urge you to go to MACNA. This is going to be my 20th one in a row. I go every single year since 2002. And it is a show that will benefit your brain in such amazing ways that you will, I mean, basically it's Reef Keeping College for the weekend. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you will take away so much information in 3 days. It would take you a year worth of reading books and reading articles online, and still you wouldn't feel fulfilled like you will going to MACNA. So I highly urge, I always tell everyone to go every single year. And every year I meet one or two people, or maybe a few more, that say, I'm here because you told me to go. So I really hope you'll go. I'll be there, of course. I'm speaking on Friday. I'm talking about how to correct measures in your aquarium using ICP testing. And that is a brand new presentation. And those of you that attend, I hope you enjoy it. I do believe after the show is over, these videos do become available online so you can watch it later on through the official channels. But it's much better to be there in person than to watch it from your screen. Costs more money, yes, I know. And these days things cost a lot. But in the past, I used to tell people it probably cost you about $800 to go to MACNA for the weekend, plus food. And it might be a little bit higher now, but you've got more than 100 vendors there, so you can talk with everyone about their equipment, any kind of issues you're having with your own, things you want to upgrade to something better. And then there's all the speakers. And the speakers are the important part. There are so many events happening throughout the year that, you know, could be from a club-sized frag swap to an official event like Reefapalooza or Aquashella, you know, and other ones that come to mind. But they are not speaker-centric. They may have a speaker or two, and, you know, a handful of people will go listen to a speaker. MACNA is all about education. It's about teaching you things you don't know. And if you don't go into those rooms and sit through those sessions and learn, like I said, huge disservice. So it's much better for you to just go and pick the talks that are of interest to you, and then just walk in there and sit down and don't look at your phone. How many of us do that? And just enjoy the presentation. When I go to hear a speaker, and there's several this year I want to go listen to, the first thing I ask myself is, or no, I'm sorry, I just go and listen to it. And then afterwards, I ask myself, what was the one thing I learned? I try to always learn one new nugget from every single speaker I listen to. And it's been rare. Out of 20 years, I think there was 2 presentations where I got nothing. And I was kind of upset. And I'm not the first guy. I remember reading a post from someone else, and he was furious. He went on Facebook and said, 45 minutes of my life, I'll never get back. He was so mad. And I was like, wow, you really did hate that talk. But usually they're going to be good. There's going to be something in there that will help you or give you a new angle of something you already know, and you can pick it up. I mean, how many of you on this channel have been in this hobby a long time, and yet you tune in, even though I talk about cyanobacteria or cleanup crews or water testing, and you'll come away with, oh, that's something new I didn't know. And that's always been my goal, is to try and include some extra nuggets that will make your life a little bit more complete. So, I mean, I can't get it all. There's no way I can hit out of the park every time, but I try really hard to cover information And I want to go off on a tangent for just a second because I don't know how many of you are TikTok users, but I'm having a heck of a time liking TikTok. And I think the reason I'm not liking it, besides the algorithms and curating the right stuff, everything is so fast and to the point that you can't glean any information. I mean, there's nuggets. I mean, there's little bits where you're like, oh, but they don't explain it. And I need more time to process information. And it's driving me a little bit crazy that I don't like it like the rest of the planet. So if you like it, what do you like? Maybe you could tell me some specific channels you follow that I could follow, and maybe I could appreciate them. But I watched one today. I was like, oh, that's wait. And it was already gone. I was like, okay, I guess I can rewatch it again. And I was just like, no, I don't understand how they're doing what they're doing. And it just goes by too quick. So and you're listening to a guy that does long rants or long presentations here on YouTube. I don't do anything in 4 to 7 seconds. So maybe the TikTok stuff isn't right for this guy. But I did record a little bit for you guys today of the Reef tank, which is over here to my left. And I wanted to show that to you. So we will resume last video. And let me turn off this sound so that way you don't have to hear the humming of the pumps. So what I do is I just stood in front of the tank with my iPhone. I didn't even put a clip on the front. I just wanted to show you what the state of the tank is today. The corals are doing really well. Some are doing so well they're killing their neighbors, which is kind of the natural progression of a reef hobby. If you're doing your job right, you will literally make your tank outgrow the glass box, and you will constantly have to be trimming things. But overall, I'm very, very happy with the look of the tank right now, and I will have to actually reach in there. I haven't actually put my hands in this tank in, feels like weeks. You know, there's the occasional I have to move one thing scenario, but even then, if I can do it with a long-handled stick instead of putting my hands in the water, I will do that because I don't want to reach in. But there are certain tasks I need to accomplish. It's going to require me to put my hands in there soon. But I do hope that you are liking this. I don't know why that countdown timer's sitting there. Let's get rid of that. All right, there you go. The green slimer has been interesting in how it's growing. It started off as thin sticks, and the upper sticks are thicker. So it's really doing quite well. Yeah, no, the tank's doing great. And then what we can do here for a second, I can zoom in on this tank so you guys can see inside the tank next to me a little bit better. I just want to give you a little bit of a video tour. My current issue with my tank is my nitrates are crazy high again. So that is that. Oh, and I have one more thing I can show you guys. So, let's see, make sure I got that right. Okay, let me see if I can zoom in on this for you a little bit, because I know it's kind of washed out. Still too washed out. Let's see if I can change some settings on the camera. Trying to find that sweet spot. 1 second here. There we go. That's starting to look better. It's hard to make a tank and a human look good at the same time. But you can see the Randall goby on the sand, showing its beautiful upper fin. You've got the Helfriki firefish, and then the Japanese pygmy angelfish is kind of hanging out near the back at the moment, but comes out all the time. She's a beauty. And of all the corals that went in the tank, things are doing pretty well. I found some zoas on the top of the Nero 5, so I went ahead and plucked them off and glued them back onto the rock. And I replanted a piece of flame algae, and then a different piece came loose and got stuck to the Nero 5 again. So that means I got to take that one off the pump and go stick it back on the rock on the right. But yeah, things are pretty nice right now. I can leave it there for the moment while we chat. To block your view. Let's see. Oh yeah, I said I had something else to show you. That's right. So I got to change the lighting in this room for this to work. And I'm just going to have to hand hold it. I'm going to change to a different camera again. And like I said, I'm going to be holding it in my hand, so it's going to be a little bouncy. Let's see. Let's start off here, maybe. Let's see what you actually get. This one? Yeah, that's the shot. Okay, so I've got this sump going out next week. This one right here, it's pretty big and it's extremely heavy. So it's got 2.5-inch drains, and then in the back there, right there, is a third emergency drain that does nothing in case there's an emergency, water comes out. Then the water flows into the socks, and then it's going to go into this first compartment, which is the refugium. And then the water will flow through and go into the skimmer zone, and then it'll go through the triple baffles to the return zone. And there's a bunch of John Guest fittings there for dosing. So that way anything can be dosed into the system that goes back up to the tank itself. Now the customer's been waiting a long time. I spoke with him the other day. He's very happy with the look of the sump, so I'm glad about that. I'm also going to be glad about getting this out of my living room. It's the last sump in my living room. This right here will have a clear cover that sits on top. I don't have it here to show you, but it just fits into this thumb hold. And that way any spatter stays inside this area. And it also keeps any noise down too. So that, like I said, this is a big one. This one pretty much was like about $1,200 or so shipped. And I prefer not to build this type of sump. It's too heavy. It takes a second person to lift it up and to carry it out and then bring it back in and then, you know, do the final touches. But yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys that. I'll post a picture of it on Instagram later. Okay. Could just leave it right there on that angle for the rest of the show. Kidding. What were we doing? We had this one here. All right, so there's that, where you guys were looking at that. If you have any, if anyone has any questions, now is the time to ask, because today we don't have an official topic. It's just going to be a free-for-all for a little bit, then I'm going to get back to work. Yeah, Paul says he's 3,800 miles away. It's too much to drive. I understand that. Oh, that's right. Nick is getting married. I'm supposed to say congratulations, right? But you're missing MACNA, so I don't know who to support. Actually, I do. You should go to MACNA. Honeymoon at the hotel. There is a Reef-a-Palooza event happening here in Dallas in October. And hey, Chris. Chris is the one that helped me carry that big heavy sump for a couple days ago. Let's see. I'm just looking for the next question. Your medic asks, what are the tall purple dark blue stalks in your big tank that move with the current? They look so cool. Blue stalks. It might have been the Gorgonian in the far right corner. That's a possibility. They're actually brown, but depending on how the lighting looks, you know, it may look a little different. That tank looks too dark to me. Does that look right to you guys? No. I guess I was trying to make the sand look less washed out. The sand is nice and clean. So the tank is almost 100 days old, and today I discovered coralline growing on the glass, which was pretty exciting for me to see that just appear naturally on its own. I always like to see coralline because then I can scrape it off the glass, and then those seeds will land elsewhere, preferably on the rock, and spread the coralline to the rock and grow all over it. I've been looking very, very closely. Oh my God, there's more of them. They're so cool. Clearly some kind of creature's in my tank, and they move around. And they are sort of like, they act like a sea apple, but I really wish I could show them to you, but they're so freaking frail and invisible. I tried taking pictures of them the other day, but I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right now that I can see. I'm going to try to zoom in and show you these, but I don't know if it's going to work. So I'm going to have to move the camera a little closer, first of all. Okay. And then let's lower this a little bit so we can see what I'm doing. All right, and then we are going to focus. There's no way you're going to see this. So you see the bubble algae? If you look to the left of the bubble algae, let me turn the brightness. I wish I could zoom in more, but I'm too far away. The camera's too far away. Let's see if I can get you guys closer. Closer! Okay, remember, we're looking next to the bubble algae. And that fish is in my way. Okay, do you see it right above the bubble algae and to the left of the bubble algae? Those little like fibery looking things? Those tentacles, or whatever you want to call them, appendages, they are being one after another sucked into the mouth and licked clean, and then the next one in rotation. And these things came out of the live rock. And like I said, I feel like they're in the sea apple family, but I don't see the body. But I see the creature. I see the filter feeding part. It's so neat. So if you happen to know what that is, feel free to teach me your knowledge. But yeah, that thing is neat. Let's see if I can get that to focus a little bit better. Nope, it's just, you almost need a macro lens. Well, you definitely need a macro lens for this. And the hardest part is they're kind of white and almost invisible. So when you put anything behind the, the tank background it needs to be black for that to show up easier. And I don't have a black background. But anyway, if you know what that is, I'd love to know it. So teach me, teach me. And if you don't know, that's okay. But yeah, they're so cool. And like I said, I'm seeing quite a few of them. And I don't care if there's 2,000 in there. Those are neat. I'm very happy with that. All right. Now that I've changed everything on the camera, we can't use it for the stream anymore. Everything's wiggly. All right, let's see. Look at this. Looks pretty good. Going a little bit. Get myself back in the frame, maybe, in case you want to see me too. Let's see. Do a quick test. All right, so the tank looks a little washed out again, but that's kind of how it is if you're trying to put the human being on the screen at the same time. All right, so let's see. I'm looking forward to seeing someone say, that's such and such. That'd be really cool. Marcus says, great main tank, a lot of sand in there. How do you think about the amount of sand in the tank? Greetings from Austria. I love a deep sand bed, and I like to have about 4 inches of sand in the tank typically. But in this small tank behind me, there's like 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch of sand. It was one bag, which I think was 20 pounds of sand. In the Reef, I did it so long ago. I put the sand in there probably 2011, if not 2010. I think it's 2011 when the sand went in, and I got a pallet of sand and salt, and the I must have had 18 to 24 bags of sand, and then I had another 12 to 16 trays of live sand. It literally looked like those trays that you'd buy steaks at the butcher counter that have the saran wrap on top, or maybe you buy chicken and you've got like these chicken breasts and chicken halves, and then you peel off the top and you got this tray. It was trays of live sand, and I put all that in the Reef, and I put some in the refugium, and I've had it ever since. And then when my tank leaked and I had to break it down, I took the sand out and washed it, and I put it right back in the tank again. So I've had that same sand for a decade, and I love sand. I think it looks completely natural. Whenever I go diving, I see sand in the ocean. I'm like, yep, it's real. There's no bare bottoms in the ocean. Jam says, I remember a live stream where Mark said he wasn't a multiple tank guy. Well, this is Caitlin's tank. It's not mine, so it's okay. It's hers, and I'm just taking care of it for her while she's away. Also, Jam asks, what's the status of the new NEM tank? I thought it was happening after the floors were done. Floors are done. Tank's not up yet. Life. Just one thing after another. The tank is in my way in the back room, and I need to build a stand for it and a canopy, and I haven't done that yet because I was trying to finish my new building, which I shared a little clip on Instagram early this morning showing you some of what it looks like in there now because I've built one of my new workstations. And I got to build one more, and I've got to put in some lights. When I did the stream 2 weeks ago, everyone kept saying it's too dark. I'm like, I know, I said in the video, there's no lights on the ceiling. I only had the light from the room behind me, and I had one little floodlight pointing on me, but the main lighting hasn't worked out. The first ones I got were the wrong kind. So I sent them back, and then I ordered some new ones, and they sent the wrong kind. And when I received the box, I could tell just by the shape of the box it was the wrong kind. I didn't even open it. I just contacted the vendor and said, you made a mistake. And they went ahead and they said, okay, return them. And once we get them back, we'll send you the right ones. And I was so annoyed at that. I thought, man, the minute you have a tracking number showing FedEx has your stuff, you should send my stuff, because I didn't do anything wrong. But the right ones finally showed up yesterday. I tried to install one. They didn't work with my wiring, and they were buzzing. So I returned them too. So I got to go shopping again until I can find something that will work. I basically want 3 big lights on the ceiling. I really liked 2x2 square LEDs, but that just may not be my option. And I want them to have the dimming ability where I can just bring them down a little bit or raise them up. And that's all I want. And so far, running into some issues. So hopefully I can get that resolved in the coming weeks so I can have some decent lighting in there and be happy with it. I mean, it's something I want. I'm joking, to a couple of my closer friends that I'm just going to hang 3 fancy chandeliers from those 3 points and call it a day, which would be hilarious. Nick says, can I treat with ChemiClean and FluxRx at the same time? I wouldn't. I tend to pick one battle at a time with a reef tank. I just find that when you're doing many things at once, and that includes all the other things you have to do, whether it's a water change, or you're dosing some kind of product, or you're trying to raise nitrate and phosphate with a product, or you're cleaning your skimmer and you've got it soaking in citric acid, and now you put it back online and the thing's overflowing and your salinity is wavering and all these crazy things are happening. I just want you to pick one battle at a time. If you want to do a deep clean on your tank, spend the weekend and do a deep clean and then be done. And then if you're like, okay, now I'm ready to treat FluxRx for the next 3 weeks, then you can. And if you prefer, you could do the red cyano RX first, treat the tank for a few days, get rid of the cyano, do your big water change, make sure it's stabilized, and then the following week, start the FluxRx. But I don't like to combine the chemicals of different things all at the same time, because who knows what's going to happen. And I just find that it's easier to identify the cause of a problem if you're only doing one thing at a time. But if you were having 6 things going at once, then you're like, well, which one did such and such, or which one caused? I mean, there's a guy that posted on my YouTube this week saying that he used lanthanum chloride. Probably he used the Phosphate L from Two Little Fishies, because that's the video he was commenting on. But maybe not. Maybe just pure lanthanum. Maybe it was Phosphate RX. I don't know. But after using it, he said that his calcium raised so high that his apex wouldn't let his system add any kalkwasser for a week. And as far as I know, that's not possible. I don't think it's even plausible. Because any kind of lanthanum product you use to remove phosphate turns the phosphate, the liquid phosphate in your system, into a solid. It's a flocculant. It turns it into a flake that can be captured by a protein skimmer or a fine micron filter sock. Phosphate doesn't turn into calcium. It doesn't become something. I even did a quick dive into Google to see if there's anything about lanthanum chloride that has the word calcium in it. Is there something there I just wasn't aware of? But anyway, I don't know what happened in his tank. And he swears it was after using that product. And see, that's what I'm saying. If you only use one thing, at least you have a finger to point at. You can say, well, it was that thing. That's what caused it. But I've used lanthanum chloride for a decade, and I've never seen a surge in calcium whatsoever. I still, to this day, have not used kalkwasser, so I can't answer to that, why his decided not to dose any. But I do know that alkalinity can drop briefly after a treatment. So that's the one thing that can change. So I'm not sure what happened there. Jason says, any thoughts about pairing up the Randall Goby with another? Actually, they were a pair, and one died last year, so I'm down to the one, and I kind of would like a pair again. I also would like a pistol shrimp And Frank stopped by here a couple days ago to pick something up, and he said he was getting some in. So maybe today I should run up there and take a look at his pistol shrimp and see if it would be a good match for this lovely little fish and let them have a little cave to live in. I don't know. What do you think? Those little branchy things, they're like awesome. I just love it. I'm just like staring at them. Let's see. Dan the Marine Man. See, I had to read that carefully. Says, it's a hidden sea cucumber. Well, there's several of them then. And their body must be, I mean, it must be a worm. It's got to be some kind of a really thin worm that can live through the porosity of the rock and is putting out the filter feeding to live. But these are huge and I'm loving it. I mean, it's awesome. And then underneath, well, above the Randall Goby's head, if you look up like 1 inch, there's some thick, completely clear tentacles that are blowing around. So I try to get pictures of those, and those will go on my Instagram soon. So again, watch for some of these pictures to appear. I did take the shots. I was trying to get a decent picture of it. They're impossible to photograph, but that doesn't mean I don't try. And I tried with the flash. I tried without the flash. I tried putting a black background behind. I tried, doing without. And hopefully I'll get a decent shot that you can say, oh, I kind of see what you're looking at. It drives me crazy. All I want is National Geographic type photos every time I take a picture. Moe's Reef, that is true. He says, I've seen they've used a triple dose of fluconazole or Fluxorex. It can eradicate the bubble algae. Told you I got this little health thing going on over here. So my symptom, not symptoms, is can't catch my breath. And no fever, no change in blood pressure, no nothing. The doctor did everything. They even took a blood sample, and we did x-rays of my lungs to see what's going on. But they were like, this is not COVID. I'm like, of course, because all we do is blame COVID for everything now. Anytime you have a hangnail, it's COVID. But I've not been able to catch my breath. I feel winded all the time. I get tired super easily, and I don't know what's going on. So the doctor's trying to figure it out. Mike says, I would like to use your light schedule on my sky. Is there a way to change the start to end time? I'm pretty sure there is. I think you can keep everything the way it is and just change the set points. Like when you, like the first one, whatever, mine probably starts at 11:30 or something like that. You should be able to just change the clock to an earlier time and then hit, upload and then go to the next one and change the set, and you can just do the data points. And I think that's how you do it. I'm one of those guys that sets something up and then never touches it again. And I have to look at it, a year from now. I'm like, how did I do that? So I kind of do forget sometimes. But it should be a possibility to just change the time itself. I think you just click in there. Let me take a look while we're all sitting here together and see if that is true. I have so much stuff on my screen, I can't even see my Fusion desktop. So I'm going to go into Sky. And let's see if I do something. Okay, so that doesn't do. All right, I'm just trying to see if I could share this with you. It might work. I don't know. Let's see if we can share this program. All right, so there's my Fusion. I think you can change either here or you would just go in here and hit edit. See, I'm lying. Adjust the point. Yeah, and you would just change the time right there and hit OK. So like say, I'm going to make it 11:35 for you, maybe, or 11:40. Oh, look, I can go 1 minute. Cool. So then I would just hit OK. And now it's set for 11:31. And then you can go through one by one. You can change all your times. And then you would hit the upload, and then it would go to the cloud. Okay? It's that simple. And I'm going to leave it like that. Well, actually, because I didn't upload it, it won't save. So that's that. So let's go ahead and come back. All right, next question. Yeah, Live Rock is so cool. I love it. And oh, and do you know what? I didn't answer the question or the comment. So I think it was Mo that said, using triple strength of fluconazole, will get rid of bubble algae. I don't want to kill the algae in my tank, which sounds insane, but I really like this red bubble algae. I like the flame algae. I like this dictyota right here. I like this money plant. I forget what they call it, Halmeta. And I don't want to put something in that's going to kill those things away. Also, there's a lot of different types of sponges with an inlet and an outlet, you know, where the water just, you can literally see where the water's flowing through the body. There's one right here in the front that looks like a black nothing, but if you get really close on it, it's actually a little, it has some hints of blue in it, and there is an aperture at the top and the bottom, and the water flows right through it. And, you know, if you do anything to spook it, which I don't know how, I guess it just notices shadows maybe, I'm not positive, but you can actually watch it close, and then you'll see the openings reopen again. It's really, really neat. So I am loving all the stuff that I got on my on the Live Rock, and that's why I bought it. And just so you guys know, Live Rock, it's expensive, but there's so many perks to it. And I just feel like everyone is so terrified of potentially getting any kind of thing in their tank that they want everything to be bone dry, scientifically sanitized. And then they're going to put corals in there anyway, and those corals come with things. Even if you dip them, you end up getting those things anyway. But you're never going to get the good stuff. I mean, you'll get things like aptasia or flatworms or you know, sea spiders, but you won't get cool sponges, and you won't get cool brittle starfish or things that are nifty. And you know, this tank's got probably 6 or 7 things that I wasn't even planning on, and I was very happy to receive. I found 1 keyhole limpet. I'm pretty sure I saw 2, but I haven't found the second one. They're very small. They're about this big. And they're moving their way through the tank, and it's awesome. So I will go in there manually to remove little tufts of green hair algae, obviously, because I don't want that. And I may add some snails because, you know, you got to have snails in your tank to kind of keep things under control. But for now, I mean, like I said, the tank is only 3 months old. It's not really time to just load it up with critters. And I don't really want to devour all the cool natural stuff that's growing. I think I shared a video in my stories where this thing in the dead center that the bubble algae is on, that's an actual clam facing the wrong direction. It's literally, the hinge part is facing you. And at first, I didn't know what it was. You know, I mean, I just thought it was rock. And then one day I was working in there, and the thing goes, chook. And I'm like, well, how are you holding on backwards? And I kind of want to peel it off so I can see the other side of it, but I don't want to break it. You know, I don't want to actually tear whatever it's using to hold on with. Maybe one day I'll get lucky and it'll let itself go and just sit on the sand like a clam, and I can just appreciate it that way. I don't know. I like my little feather dusters. I like that I've planted a bunch of zoanthids in here. I keep thinking, man, you know, 6 months, 9 months from now, when it's just covered in zoas, it's going to be colorful and pretty. And I look at other people's tanks for inspiration that have these giant zoa gardens. Also, the Recordias, this one here has 3 mouths, and the one over here has well, at least 2. And I'm hoping they will split. Oh, things that are splitting. In the main reef, I have this really pretty red carpet anemone this size. It's not the kind that comes big. It literally stays small. Hi, Jack. And the anemone has moved all over the reef. It has gone everywhere. And I'm just like, okay. And then a few days ago or a week ago, I looked at the return line, which my return lines come into the water from the air, and then they have the random flow generators on there that shoot the water out to create flow in the tank. And somehow, on one of those, there's a red carpet anemone on there. And I was like, well, number one, how did you get on there? Because it couldn't like go up the glass and come across the oar brace and get on that pipe because there's nothing, they don't touch. This thing had to fly, land, and hold on tight. And somehow it got onto there, and so it's hanging on the bottom of the plumbing, the PVC. And I was like, okay, so you moved again. And so I went back to where I saw it the day before, and there was another one. So there's 2 in my tank, and I like them. And people said that they will split. Well, they're adorable. Like I said, they're really, really small. They're bright red with a green mouth. And to have, you know, I already doubled my money. The one I bought has doubled. I'm very happy with that. I'm not trying to put them anywhere. I'm just enjoying discovering them wherever they show up in my reef. Um, Paul says, how is that ridiculously expensive fish? She's awesome. And I think her name is Flair. I'm trying to decide if I love that name, but I'm leaning into it. So she is so pretty. And I'm so glad I have her. She's a year old now. When I got her, she was 9 months old. So she might be a year and a month old because the tank is 3 months old, but she was hanging in my reef for, I think, 21 days, 21, 22 days. Yeah, because I set up the tank, started the cycle. I have to look at the dates again, make sure I got this all right. But anyway, I've had her a little bit longer than this tank because she was in the reef in the Peacemaker. Jam says, any experience dosing Tropic Marin K+ and A trace elements? Only thing that has slowest changed when I ramped up over my month is the skimmate increased. So you're saying you're dosing a form of potassium and then the trace elements, and your skimmer has done better? I'm not really sure I'm following the question. But I haven't used either of those products, so I might not have an answer for you. Manuel says, my neighborhood water tested for arsenic, the same water I use in my tank. Is there a strong filter pad or chemical I can use to save my corals? Some are closed and some have died. Oh, wow. Well, I think a lot of times we will look at the report from the city and we will then say, okay, clearly that's what killed my tank. And it is possible. Okay, so I'm not saying it's not true. But we're not positive if the arsenic made it through the RO system and through the DI stage and then into your reef as well. Have you actually tested the tank for arsenic? Have you done an ICP test to see if that number is valid? Because you need to know. And if you need the answer now because corals are not doing well, what you want to do is get a kit for whatever brand you like. I'm using Reef Labs out of Florida, or you could use ICP Analysis out of Denver. And you can get your water sample, you can register it on their website, and then you can ship it overnight. You can use FedEx or UPS or the post office, but do overnight shipping. It's going to cost you more. I've been sending ICP tests every single week for the last 2 months, and I gave up on the slow method of the post office. It was too slow for what I'm doing, and so I've been paying second day air. And so I drop it off on Monday, and it is delivered on Wednesday. So it's pretty quick. If you want really fast answers, you can do like I did when I shipped it overnight to Denver, and I shipped like 3 ounces of water, and it cost me $36 to ship it. But the next night I had my answer, and so I could then decide what to do with my tank. And in the case of what you can do for your tank, you can run carbon because that absorbs things. You can also use a product that is called I can think of the packages from Two Little Fishies, and it is a Metazorb, and it absorbs trace metals. I think arsenic's in the metals part of the periodic table. So you can use that to help absorb things in the system that don't belong. Another thing that people have used in the past that just tells you what's in your water would be polyfilter, which I'm not talking about the stuff that looks like you'd fill a pillow with. It's an actual, like, almost like a felt pad, and you put it in your sump, or you put it in canister filter, and you let the water run through it for a day, and then you take it out and look at what color it is, and then you look at the package, and it'll say based on the color what it detected in your system, whether the aluminum is high, whether there is just nutrients, just brown, or if there's some other kind of metal. There's different. The thing will change colors, so that's another method that we've used. But ICP would be the fastest answer for that question. But carbon would be the first one, and then if you are not trusting the water, you're going to get water somewhere else for a water change. So that's the thing. If you're doing an ICP test, what you can do is you can send in a water sample from your tank, and then you can send a water sample from your RODI system if you're making your own water, and that way you can verify the level of arsenic in the brand new water you want to use, as well as the water in your tank, and see where it's at. But there's a chance, and I'm not trying to be a downward, a Debbie Downer here, but there's a chance you're worried about arsenic and your tank's actually going through some crisis of something unrelated, but you're pointing to this. So maybe it's something else is going on. We've been through a lot of crazy weather lately. Your tank may be getting too hot. Your tank might be getting too cold at night because we're heading into fall, and now your air conditioner is still in summer mode, and so maybe the tank's getting too cold at night and corals are getting pissy. So you need to kind of figure out what's happening in the tank. And maybe, you know, like I said, ICP testing will help a lot because it'll identify calcium, magnesium. It won't do alkalinity. It won't do nitrate. It will do phosphate and phosphorus. It'll look into your potassium levels and things like that. And you can look at the information and see what's crazy high. You know, is your zinc out of control? Is your iron too high? Are you overdosing trace elements? You know, these are the things that we want to verify. So I hope that helps. Anton says, is it possible to turn your CNC router into a glass scorer? I don't know. I do know that the CNC router can be used to cut wood, acrylic, or metal. I don't know if it could do some kind of etching like you're describing. I do know that there is I pursued this briefly, but I changed my mind. There is a laser head that you can put on the CNC machine, and then you could do some laser cutting, but it was sort of an aftermarket add-on doodad that I just felt I wasn't going to be happy with. So if I ever do end up buying a laser, it'll be a standalone unit that I can put smaller pieces of acrylic in to do the etching that I'd like to accomplish one day. But I don't know about doing anything with glass. I mean, think about this. Normally when you work with any kind of glass, and I have some history of this because my family had a glass business. Normally when you're working with glass and you're doing any kind of cutting or grinding or whatever, you're going to have water on there, and the water has to run off the glass, and it's going to go onto the table beneath. So the base is all made of steel, but then there's this huge honeycomb type thing that looks like masonite that the air sucks through. And on top of that is MDF, and if you know anything about MDF, if it gets wet, it gets swollen and ruined instantly. So I don't think I could do something that had running water. But see, when you're cutting metal, you probably have something on top that is not my masonite. I'm sorry, is not my MDF. And because it's going to be squirting oil on the bits to keep them cool to do what you got to do. So maybe you end up with something else, but I probably don't have the vacuum then. I might be using something else on the top of my table that has clamps to hold the product in place so I can use the machine to, you know, make something. But for now, I am just going to use it for acrylic work. Spicy Reef says LED lighting usually is already modulated at the fixture, and dimmers use a PWM to dim. They don't mix. Well, I bought a couple of lights at Costco that are in the area where all the products are in my shop, and the dimmer works perfectly with them. But those lights had a couple of wires come off of them, the white and the black, and probably a ground. I can't remember now. And the new lights I got had 5 wires. And I did not run extra wires from the light switch all the way through the sheetrock and into the attic because I didn't know I'd need something like that. So I kind of need lights that just use 2 wires if I want to do what I want to do. And I might be stuck. I might have to just have on-off and not be able to dim it at all. But the plan was I could dim it some in case it was too bright for during a live stream. I want to make sure that I could adjust lighting. That was my hope. So we'll have to see what happens. Thomas says, would a Marine Beta do okay in a 65-gallon reef tank? Yeah, you just need to, yeah, absolutely. It will get bigger, and then one day it'll want a bigger tank. But if you can get a small one now, you can enjoy it for several years. Peter says, has the Interruptus angelfish started nipping at any corals yet? Thinking of adding an African flameback to a softy tank. Well, I mean, she's always going around nipping at something, but I haven't seen her touch a single zooanthid. She hasn't messed with a Recordia. I don't even know what she's going after, but she's always looking at something. She hasn't eaten all the sponges away, which angelfish like sponge, so I kind of thought I'd lose these really cool sponges that are in here. She's just a pretty fish. Yeah, she's cool. Now, your African flameback is probably going to be fine in a softy tank, so I wouldn't worry about that one. Charles says, is that all the rock they're going to put? Yes, I don't want more rock in the tank. I'm not trying to make a full-blown reef tank. This tank has 0 filtration on it. It's got live rock, live sand, a power head, a heater, and an air stone, and water changes. And so once a week I change water. The last 2 weeks in a row I've changed 5 gallons. So if I change 5 gallons a week, it's a 27-gallon tank. I've changed 20 gallons in a month. And the worst part is that the glass gets dirty. So there's no hang-on back filter, there's no canister filter, there's no skimmer, there's nothing on there. Underneath here in the cabinet for now, it's just a rat's nest of wires that I need time to clean up. And I have the Hydros controller, so it can notify me if the tank gets out of temperature range, it can notify me if there's a power outage, and it can turn the heater on and off safely instead of just relying on the heater itself to use its internal, thermistor to cycle it on and off. So I have a level of protection. I also have a battery backup that the air stone is plugged into, so that way if the tank loses power, the air stone keeps going indefinitely until the air pump runs out of watts, which I think an air pump and a UPS can go a pretty long way. Lincoln says, I am thinking about switching from dosing ALK to using Kalkwasser. How would you make the switch without creating a swing? I finally got my tank locked in. I'm nervous to mess it up. Well, it's going to be kind of hard not to have a swing because you're changing one thing to go with something else. Alkalinity, you're using to buffer it up and buffer it up and buffer it up, where Kalkwasser tends to maintain your number. So if you're doing daily testing and you're checking your alkalinity daily, or you could test alkalinity and calcium daily if you wanted initially for a week or two. You could just see where the numbers go. But at one point, you will find that the Kalkwasser is providing enough or maybe not enough. So you'll have to find that sweet spot. And you've got to actually do it through testing. So if you wanted to just switch to Kalkwasser, you do. You just turn it on and start dosing that or dripping it in or however you're going to use it. Hopefully you have some kind of a controller, so if something goes wrong, it turns off the Kalkwasser from adding any more to the tank. That would be really important. So if you're using a dosing pump and you have a pH probe in your tank, if the pH starts to spike, it shuts off the Kalkwasser. That would be your first level of defense. And then you measure your alkalinity, like if you dose it overnight, then you measure it the next day and see what your alkalinity is. And if it's not enough, you may have to put in a little bit of ALK, or you may find you need to put in some once a week. So you'll just have to determine what works. But you're not going to have a crazy swing, but there's definitely going to be a little bit of a roller coaster effect just because you're changing from one method to another. OU812 says, I'm late, but I'm here. I was late too, and I run the show. So it's okay. Jason, I'll see you in 5 days. Roll says, do you use an air pump? Yeah, there's one right there bubbling behind me there. And it's got a ceramic air stone that's heavy, so it sinks to the bottom. And then usually I take it out and I clean it with a brush, and I clean the heater too, and I clean the Nero 5, and last night I didn't do any of those. So I definitely would like to take those out and clean them before the stuff gets on there so much it's a difficult thing to clean. Because I like all those components to be nice and clean and kind of invisible. Hey, Mike, I appreciate that. He says Caitlin's Reef looks great. I'm very happy with it. Congratulations, Triggerfish. I'm glad to hear your tank is 3 months old as well. Lee says, did you ever check if they might be a hydroid type on the live rock? I just don't know what it is. I don't think it's hydroids. Hydroids are different. Like I said, this thing, it's literally sucking in one branch, licking it clean, puts it out, and then gets the next one, and then gets the next one. That's how a cucumber does, like a sea apple does. They totally do that. They lick off their appendages. And I think that's what's happening with these things. And I just cleaned the glass, so the water was kind of murky, about 30 minutes before the show. And I think that's why all these things came out. And who knows, maybe the angelfish is making them retract later on when she's nibbling around. I'm not positive, but this is a great tank. I really like it. Jack, stop! She's sharpening her nails on my leather. Jose says, do you think an Apex Junior is overkill for a 13.5 gallon tank? Nope. On this channel, there's a video about a tank. It's 3 feet long. I forget how many gallons it is. I think it's smaller than your 13. I think it's a 12. And it has an Apex and a Trident and a sump and a skimmer. There's like $5,000 worth of gear under his little tank. And it's a beautiful tank. And if you haven't seen that video yet, you got to check it out. I think I called it E. Schultist's 3-foot reef or something like that. Shouldn't be hard to find. It's going to be in one of my more popular videos, so you can just find it that way by sorting my videos by popularity maybe. And check it out. It's crazy. And I loved filming it. I saw it once before. I was like, I have to film this. And so one day he had me over, and because I was in town, and we captured it. And it took me a long time to release it because I wanted to do a good job, you know, with the edit. Justin says, do we circulate the water in the top-off reservoir? By the way, a lot of us say ATO or ATO reservoir all the time, and it's come to my attention, not from someone else, from my own brain, that it's a top-off reservoir. It's not automatic. The automation is the thing you put into it to make it automatically top off. But yeah, our top-off reservoir just holds the RODI water. It doesn't need any circulation. You should keep your hands out of it so it stays pure. It should have a lid on top of it so that nothing gets into it, because DI water is it's deionized. It is screaming for ions, and it'll suck them right out of the air. So if you have a container, like a 10-gallon aquarium just sitting under your tank, and you dump water into it, I guarantee you a week later, if you check the TDS of that water, it's not going to be 0. The number's going to be up because it wasn't sealed in a container. So it's best to have a container that's mostly closed up with just a hole for the tubing to come out and maybe the wire for your pump. And if you never, ever put anything in, it'll stay clean. But if you're in there, you know, you're reaching in there for some reason, you take out the pump and you stick it in something else and you put it back in there again, you'll end up with TDS. So I never, ever, ever put my hand in my top-off container. And I grabbed a sample with a very clean container. Like I said, I don't want to put my hand in. So I scoop out a little sample, I check the TDS, and my TDS in my container that's been running in that spot for 3 years has a measure of 1. And I'm fine with that. I went from 0 to 1. That's okay in a container I haven't opened in 3 years. I can totally live with that. But no, we don't need to oxygenate it. We don't need to worry about pH. The water is there to replace what has evaporated. Everything else in your tank is still there. The pH, all the things you have, your top-off will not change the pH of your tank unless you added all the top-off container at one time accidentally. Because RODI water tends to be around 7, and you know, our tanks are hopefully 8.3. So there is that. But when you're, I mean, my tank, it's a 450-gallon system, and I believe my system is adding about 3.6 gallons a day as top-off. So it doesn't have enough to cause chaos. I don't need to buffer it or do anything to it. Bradley says, I just completed a tank transfer and upgraded about 5 weeks ago. All the fish and corals seem to be fine, but whatever has turned horrifically green in the last week. Well, what is the whatever? The glass, the rock, the sand? Is it a green cyanobacteria? Is it a green hair algae? Is it a green sheen on the glass? You know, I don't know what you're asking, but tanks do have to find equilibrium, and there will be an ugly period. And this tank's been going through it too. I mean, like I said, it's just over 90 days old. The sand has had moments when it looked like cyano was going to take hold, and I just kept doing my water changes and removing what little bit there was. And the sand's got a little bit of that brown stuff in it that I don't like, but I'm not going over the top. Like once a week, I just deal with it and I leave it alone. And I don't have anything stirring the sand. This little, I always want to call it a Rainsford goby. It's the wrong one. The Bartlett goby doesn't sift sand. It doesn't do anything like that. So the only thing that's literally walking through the sand is my walking dendro. And it's not walking nearly enough to do some good turnover. It just kind of moves, 6 inches here and parks for a little bit. But it's walking around the tank, and that means the worm is happy and alive inside of it, and I'm really glad about that. But you may be just going through an ugly phase. It could be you're dosing differently. It could be your lighting schedule is different because you said you upgraded. That means something, major has changed. And so you're going to have to kind of deal with some of the ramifications. And Justin says, how did you get Coraline and Caitlin's tanks so fast? Kept my hands out of it. I really didn't do anything. I'm not even dosing this tank. This tank literally gets salt water. The only change that I've done from when I first set it up, I used water from the Reef, because I thought that's going to have everything it needs. But I discovered that my nitrates have been rising like crazy in the big reef. And so by putting that water in here, the nitrates rose in here, of course, equally, which was the problem. So I've been doing water changes with new salt water in here instead to bring those nitrates back down, because there's no reason to have 2 tanks with nitrate. So it's just getting brand new salt water in there once a week, a little bit. And yeah, I saw some spots on there. And about 3 months is normal. That's where it should be. And sometimes I see people will say, oh, my tanks are running for 6 months or a year or 18 months, and I still don't have 1 speck of coralline. Well, that usually means the water is not the right equilibrium. The alkaline calcium magnesium ratios are off. So if you get those parameters straightened out and maintain them, then coralline will appear. And that's a sign of a healthy tank. And then, like I said, I like to scrape it off to send it back onto the rock where it belongs. I don't need it on the glass. So that little tiny bit that's up there above the Nero 5, I'll just chip with a credit card or something and send the little flakes down. And there's no filtration to steal it, so it won't be lost. And hopefully it'll latch onto the rock in more spots and give me more purple stuff. I really like the little tiny Helfriki too. It's so cute and so hard to take a picture of. Oh, thank you, Andrea. Appreciate that. She put the link for that tank I was talking about on here for you guys. You may have to copy and paste it because it's not a clickable link. Actually, if I paste it, I think I can make it clickable. Oh, this chat won't let me highlight it. Oh, well. Let's see. Can I do this? Nope. Can't do it either. Jose, I'm trying to read what you wrote. He said I might have cycled my tank wrong. Going low too quick, not using fish. Levels were good by day 7, so I put in 2 clowns. Did I mess up? Maybe not. I mean, if the tank is okay and the numbers are stable and the fish look healthy, then you're probably okay. This tank cycled for 21 days because that's what I believe in. I'm not looking for a quick cycle. And I used the live rock to cycle it. I didn't use any kind of a chemical other than putting in live rock enhance because the rock was just shipped to me. Oh, I want to talk about that. I talked about the live rock and I got way off topic and forgot all about where I started that conversation. But so the rock arrived, and because it's shipped damp, not underwater, like in bags of water because it's too heavy, you take off the newspaper and usually there's some die-off and you put that in the tank and the ammonia starts to rise. And that's what happened. The tank had an ammonia cycle, which then switched to nitrite, which then switched to nitrate. And at day 21, everything was great. And I was able to put the first fish in, which was the goby. And then after a week of seeing the goby was doing well, and I think I had one other thing in there, maybe some zoanthids. I watched both of those. They both did well. And I said, okay. And that's when I moved over to the angelfish. And it's just been like this ever since. But I want to talk about the rock itself, because I mentioned to you guys it's expensive, and but I really like all the life on there. And if you order live rock from, like, for example, I got mine from gulfliverock.com, and I believe the rock I bought was $80 for about 20 pounds of rock, 25 pounds maybe, and shipping overnight was $100. So it was $180, which is probably somewhere around $8 a gallon, $8 a pound. And if you're trying to set up a big tank and you need a lot of rock, obviously the math will work in your favor as it gets bigger, but of course it becomes heavier, and so overnight shipping becomes a little bit more pricey. But you have the benefit of all the cool things on your rock. Now, when we used to only use live rock and you didn't have access to things like Marco rock, it just didn't exist yet. That wasn't a thing we could buy. People would literally go and look for base rock, which was dry rock from like a quarry. And they'd hunt down some kind of rock, and sometimes they got the wrong kind, and people would get that out of your tank. And other times they'd say, no, this is fine. It's limestone. It's calcium based. It's been in the earth for millions of years. And yep, that one's okay. But it's super dense. And you hold it in your hand, and it's just like holding lead. It's so heavy. And so you put that in there. That doesn't have the benefit. That type of rock, when it's dense like that, doesn't have the benefit of denitrification. It doesn't have the ability to filter water at all. But people like to use some base rock, maybe 50% base rock, and then 50% live rock because they didn't like spending $8 a pound. And I didn't like paying for it either, but I still did. And I always bought my live rock. I'd go to the store, I'd hunt out what I liked. And one of the rocks that I bought eons ago was $72 for a rock. One rock. I was like, oh, I love the shape of that. And the guy's like, okay. And I was like, I'll take it. And then he weighed it and he says it's $72. And I was like, oh my God, I bought one rock for $72? And that was back then. You know, now $72 is a frag. But that was a lot of money. And I still have that rock to this day, and the anemones are on it, and they're in their holding tank waiting to go into their new cube. But yeah, never got rid of that rock. None of my rock has ever been gotten rid of. Everything in my reef has been rock I got from the beginning, that just through the upgrades and switching tanks, the rock kept going with more rock coming in. And my frag tank was the only one where I got rid of some of the rock because the stuff was from a vendor who said, I'm going to start selling rock. We're making this beautiful stuff. Would you try it out? And I did try it out, and the tank never did well. And it was last year when I was cleaning it out to prepare it for frags that Dwayne and I were looking at it, and he was like, I don't trust this rock at all. There's some weird stuff in here, and I think you should just get rid of it. And we literally threw that away. But all the normal live rock you would normally get from a regular supplier, you should be safe with. And I really do encourage using it. Now, I know this is a funny thing. And you just see people do things in cycles. I started this hobby in 1997. And in 2002 to 2008, that was where I was learning a lot and using live rock and stuff. And then, I've just been building on it ever since. Whenever Marco Rock came out, some people were buying it, others were not. Others were like, nope, I like live rock. And you had people with base rock and live rock because they couldn't afford an entire tank full of live rock. But then you'd get to the point where somebody would fill the entire tank with base rock and put in one rock of live rock. And it's like, this will seed my whole tank, which I don't believe. I mean, eventually, yes, but no, it's not going to create a miracle. You can't put 99% rock and then put in 1% live and expect the reef to do its thing. All you do is create a rock structure you can glue things onto, but you're not going to get any perks or any benefits of live rock for a long time. If the tank is 50-50, you're still probably looking at 9 months for the base rock to acquire some of the attributes of live rock because life migrates. So there is that. But it just takes longer. So if you're using dry rock, it takes a long time. And a lot of people these days only use dry rock. And so then Brightwell, I guess a year and a half ago, came out with a new product called Dry Rock Starter Kit. And it came with stuff you could use to kind of get that rock going and kind of get a cycle going quickly and help you avoid the ugly months. Because around month 3, 4, 5, the tank can look really ugly. And it's just a phase that you have to live through because you need all the bacteria and everything to settle and populate and equalize and adjust and balance out. And then your tank starts to look better. And around 6 to 9 months, it's looking a lot better. And then a year later, you're like, I love my tank. So these things work. But it's just funny how we went from only using live rock, which was the #1 rule, to then using some base rock to save money, to now we only use dry rock because it's cheap. It's like $2 a pound or less, and I got all this rock, and I can. And then you got tanks at this point where they're making what look like fingers of rock to glue things on, but there's no structure. It's literally wispy design, more aesthetically pleasing, but not fish friendly, and not even really coral friendly because you have nowhere to put stuff other than on the sand. You can plant some things on the twigs, but there's nowhere for the fish to hide and call home or safety because there's no hidey holes, where I'd much rather see some kind of rock where the fish can swim through a cave or have a little spot that they can hug up against when they're feeling in danger. And even when I'm working this tank, these fish, they're kind of, okay, he's doing this, and then all of a sudden I do something, and you just see all the fish, and they scatter and vanish. They know where to go for safety, and they found their little hidden spots. Where if the tank has nowhere to go hide because it looks like palm fronds, I'm trying to describe, it's so thin and fingery, wispy and branchy, there's nothing, there's no base, there's no shelter. to go into. Think about you. You're in a big bad rainstorm, thunder, lightning, and everything. Are you going to want to stand next to a tree, or do you want to go inside a house? You need a whole roof over you. You want a building you can go into for safety. You don't want to just get up against the side of something and hope you don't get struck. So, huge fan of Live Rock. Yes, it costs money. Benefits are huge, and I recommend it. I always have. I have no fear of recommending you buy Live Rock. And if you end up getting something interesting like a mantis shrimp, just catch it. You can remove it. You can give it to the fish store. They'll feed it to one of their predators, one of the fish that eat that kind of stuff. Bradley says, we're talking about pervasive, vibrant photo green. Oh, you mean the water has turned green? Like there's a phytoplankton bloom? That can happen. And usually to get rid of that weird bloom through the tank where the whole tank has just turned green, you may need to run a UV to help it process and eliminate that. I didn't know where you're talking about where the green was. I didn't realize it was green water. So yeah, if the whole tank turns green water, I think UV is usually the solution for that. And it will just dissipate in a couple of days as it burns off, as the water travels over the bulb, over the UV bulb. Justin says, I'm so glad you introduced me to Phosphate RX. I'm hooked on that stuff now. What an awesome product. I love Phosphate RX. And, I've talked about this in the past. When I was fighting phosphates back in early 2004, or late 2004, early 2005, I was using different GFO products with zero results. Nothing worked. It didn't matter what brand I used. I made sure it was barely moving. I tried to have the right amount for the size tank. Phosphates wouldn't come down, and they were high. My phosphates were like 2.0 to 3.0, and it just was going to take a lot to bring them down. And there was a product on the market called Phosbuster Pro. I think it was a Kent product maybe. And so you had this little, maybe a 250 milliliter bottle, and I needed a bottle and a half per treatment. And I would hold a PVC pipe into my sump that would be right in front of the return pump, and I would just pour the liquid down the bottle, and the water would just go straight down the pipe into the pump, and then you see the white cloud hit the tank. And then the next day, phosphates were down. And then I did this 2 or 3 times until I got them down where they needed to be. And I was like, this stuff's amazing. And then later on, I came across a product called Phosphate Control, which was, because I was buying Phosbuster Pro by the case. I'd get like 12 bottles at a time. I'd tell the fish store, I don't like buying these one at a time. Can you just like order me a case and save me a little bit of money? And they're like, yeah, no problem. And so I got myself a case at a time. And that's how I just used it sporadically to knock down the phosphate. And then Phosphate Control came out, which was a Blue Life product. And I was using it, and I was like, this is even better, because I was pouring a bottle of liquid, and now I could just count drops. And I mean, I didn't, because it was way more concentrated. And plus, even back then, people were losing yellow tangs to Phosbuster Pro. And I remember talking with one of their salesmen, and they said, yeah, it's a known problem. We warn everyone to buffer your alkalinity up a little bit, like 20 minutes before you dose, so that your yellow tangs will be okay. No idea why yellow tangs were susceptible to this one, but it was a thing. So I said, what are you going to do to solve it? He goes, we're going to water it down. So the product in these bottles, they were going to make it weaker for the same price. We're getting even more water in the bottle. And I was just like, seems like a little bit of a ripoff. And he's like, well, people don't want to lose their yellow tangs. Like, yeah, I know, but still. It just kind of bothered me because I had a yellow tang and it swam through it, didn't care. So I didn't understand why people would lose them, but it was happening to some, and people get mad. And you understand you don't want to lose a fish when you're trying to solve a problem. And so they were diluting it. Well, then Phosphate Control came out where I could count the drops. And I didn't have to buy all these bottles of water. I could get one little bottle. It treated 1,000 gallons, I think. And I was like, this is fantastic. And I'd count in whatever I used, 30 drops, 90 drops. And I was like, that was super easy. Way easier than taking a bottle and pouring it down a PVC pipe into my sump. And I used that product for a long time. And then one day, Phosphate Control was changed to Phosphate RX. And so I called them up and said, why'd you change the name? I mean, it's the same thing, right? I said, oh yeah, the Problem is you can't use the word control in the state of California. There's an actual fine for $80,000. So they had to repackage everything and change the labels, the boxes, the website, everything. I was like, for 80 grand, I would have left California. I would have built a shop in Arizona where you can use the word control. There's certain words you can't say, like I think you can't use the word pest. I think you can't use the word killer. These are certain words that just you get in trouble with in certain states, and so they had to rename the whole brand to RX. That's why everything they sell is an RX, and works great. I've been using it all these years. I've been using it for over a decade in my tank. I'm using it more now than I have ever in the past, but my phosphates aren't crazy high. I'm keeping them where I like them, somewhere around 0.1 to 0.2, which I know is higher than most of you like to keep it, but my nitrates are so high, I need more phosphate in the system, so I'm not trying to knock it way down to super low levels. Varshil says, would a 6-line RAS be a good idea for a tank of a similar size to the one that I have here in the long term? I don't really like the 6-line RAS because it's kind of a bully. I'd rather you get a similar looking one, like a 4-line or an 8-line. So it's a little bit harder to find one of those, but not impossible. And you can even request it. You can say, I would like a 4-line or an 8-line RAS. They're more friendly. The 6-lines are just, like I said, they're too aggressive. And unfortunately, they'll just be chasing things. And in a small tank, a chase is a bad thing because it's a constant chase, because there's nowhere to duck and retreat to. Tim says, I keep seeing things around about a bolo for a fish named Mickey Gilly. No, I don't have any idea what that's about. But I do know this fish right here is really, really happy. Hey, Justin, thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that. Let's see. Tim says, you're right about real live rock is the best. So he's not a big fan of Marco Rock. I mean, I'm not against Marco Rock. I understand its purpose. And, you're not taking anything from the ocean, which is nice, and you're saving some money. But it just takes longer to get the tank established. That's my point. You just don't get those instant tanks that you can with live rock. And when I say an instant tank, I'm not trying to rush something, because I did a 21-day cycle. But what I mean is the tank just gets established more rapidly and just does better during those, 3, 6, 9-month level. It just does well. Where with dry rock, it just seems like you're watching the rock go from white to maybe red to then green and blue. And then finally it starts to get some purple hue to it. And, then a year later, it's starting to look decent. And depending on what you're dosing your tank, or if you're adding extra things like, I don't know, purple up or what's that one that people are using these days? PNJ or PNS. That's something that's supposed to help get some color on your rock. Or you're buying fake rock that's been colored purple. And I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's a dye or a paint or what, but it's it gives you that instant look, but it doesn't give you the benefit of the life that's in live rock. So I really do like it. And I remember we would get rock from Fiji that was shipped to your local fish store. And you could, at least my fish store, you could just say to the store, hey, next time you're ordering, okay, so let me teach you some tricks here. When you go to your fish store and you're looking at things, you might say, oh, this is so expensive, but they need to stay in business, okay? They have to stay open. So don't nickel and dime them on every transaction, first of all, because they have to pay the rent, they got to pay the utilities, they got to pay the labor, they got to pay the insurance, and then they have to buy the products, and they have to have thousands of dollars worth of stuff sitting on the shelves. So if you want to save some money from time to time, that's okay. And you can always ask if they'll help you save some money. Maybe they'll say yes. But what you can do, and what I did in the past, is I would say, listen, you're going to order some live rock in soon, right? And they're like, yeah. I said, when you do that, would you be willing to add one extra box on top of your order? So like if you're ordering 10 boxes, can you order 11? And then let me just buy a box, sight unseen. I have no idea what's in the box, and save me some money. And they were like, absolutely. And they were very happy to do that. So you'll get a box that had 45 pounds of rock in it. You had no idea what's in there. It's going to have die-off. It's going to have, ammonia. It's going to have sponges dying and stuff. And you would just, give them whatever it cost. A couple of $100, maybe it was a little bit more, but, you didn't have to worry about freight and all that other stuff because he was already ordering in all these cases. It was just one more box on the pile. And so that's a way that you can save some money with a fish store if you have a good relationship with the owner. So develop a relationship. Make friends. I mean, that's a good thing. So I'd get my rock, I'd open it up at home, and I immediately put it in salt water. And there was a period, when we first got it, it was covered in all kinds of cool life. I loved it. You might get a free urchin. There might be a rock crab in there. There was worms. There was feather dusters. Occasionally, some lucky person might get an octopus. Just critters, like bonus hitchhikers. But then some people had to ruin it for all of us. And they would sit there and say, I don't like all this stuff on the rock. And it had black areas or it smelled or whatever. So what Walt Smith's company did is they'd take the rock that they'd been growing in the ocean, which they would plant these, they'd make the rock and they'd plant in the ocean. And then they'd go out every so often and they'd turn the rock, I don't know. Trying to think of what we cook or we flip it. But anyway, they would turn the rock and then they'd leave it alone, and then in a few weeks they'd flip it again, and then finally after like 9 months or so, this is a fully populated live rock covered in critters, and they'd bring them onto the boats and they'd bring them to shore and they'd bring them into their facility, and then they'd pressure wash them with salt water to get everything off the rock so it's just clean rock. And I said, why are you doing that? And they said, we got too many complaints about all the stuff that was on the rock. I was like, are you kidding me? That's the best part. And he's like, yeah, but, we're in business to sell rock. I'm like, oh. So the best live rock we ever got, because some people complained, got changed to more clean live rock. And it still was okay. And I have some of that rock in my reef to this day. I remember it was funny. I was at a MACNA. So I told you at the beginning of the show, go to MACNA. There I was, I think it was the banquet, which is Saturday night. And while we're all sitting there, they made an announcement, you should reach under your chair and see if there's something there. And so people would, find an envelope or a card and they'd look at it. And if they happened to be in that seat where the card was, they got a cool prize. Could be a skimmer, could be some fish from ORA. It could be seahorses. It could be this. And mine said rock. I'm like, I got a rock? Are you kidding me? And so I went up there to claim my rock, and said, oh, you got a case of Walt Smith live rock. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So now I've got this 50-pound box of rock. I'm in I don't know, Wisconsin or somewhere. And I had to put that rock on the conveyor belt at the airport, to like luggage. And then when I got home, you see the suitcases coming down, then shunk, here came my rock, which I had to load up under my arm, grab my suitcase, go to the car, come home, and open it up. And the thing is that this rock differed from other live rock because it was man-made. They tended to have a similarity of shape. The texture always looked good, but like you'd have kind of an oval shaped, sort of like an avocado shape with like a hole going through it. And you could hold up two of them side by side and say they kind of look like the same, where I like rock that just everything's varied and everything's changed and everything, nothing goes with the other thing and it's complete variety. I like that. And Tampa Bay saltwater made really cool live rock back then. There was all different shapes and covered in critters, tons of stuff on it. So, like I said, that's just some of the history that went on back in the day that has completely changed. And many of you have no idea what I'm talking about. But this was really nice to use, and it's kind of where my foundation is when it comes to reef keeping. So I'm always promoting Get Live Rock. And fortunately, there are more than one company to buy live rock from. You're not actually stuck with only one choice. I picked one that I had heard about, and I was very happy with my order. I got all kinds of cool stuff in here. And when I posted on Facebook that I got my rock, 3 different businesses immediately said, oh, Mark, I wish I'd known. We would have hooked you up. And I was like, well, I wasn't looking for a hookup in the first place. I wanted some live rock. But now I know there's 4 places that sell live rock. So if any of you are looking for live rock, it's out there. And you can just Google. It won't be hard. Unique Corals is one. They're bringing in live rock from Australia. And it's very expensive, so be prepared to hold your breath when you see the price. Gulf Coast Live Rock I told you about. There's another couple that have eluded my mind, but I can always find them for you later if you ask me. And you can always ask in Club Milo's Reef if you like. I like the look of the tank right now. So this is the actual physical schedule. When I first started the stream, I had the tank I told the light turn on. So it was like at 100%. And it was set to run for 1 hour. But with the timing, as the timer was elapsing, and I thought I'd have to reactivate it again, the normal schedule started. So this is actually the look of the tank. And it looks pretty good on camera right now. It looks right. It doesn't look blown out. I don't want to skip any questions here. Let's see. Oh, another brand of rock that came out, Tim made me think of it. He said that he's talking about how a lot of rock is stored in salt water for a long time and seeded with bacteria. But it's not like live rock from the ocean. He's 100% right. There's a brand from Carib Sea called Life Rock. And it's man-made rock that's purple in color, and it's got something that almost looks like sand all over it. And once you put it in salt water, it activates the bacteria. But it's sort of a medium between dry rock and live rock without all the cool critters. I'm going to say that says slacker, not 5 lacquer. Do you think a 75-gallon is large enough for a juvenile blue tang? I plan on upgrading to a 125. At what point with a smaller tang would you know it needs to be rehomed or a tank upgrade is necessary? Great question. So I'm assuming you mean the blue hippo tang. And if you can get a little tiny one, it'll be fine in any tank. It'll be fine in this size tank. It'll be fine in a 60. It'll be fine in a 75, a 90, a 120, a 240, an 800. I mean, little tiny hippos, they're going to take a while to grow. I started one that was 1 inch in size, and my 60-gallon had it there for years. And so many people like, how could you put that in there? I was like, because it was adorable. And it grew larger, and then finally I took it out because of peer pressure, and I put it in my frag tank, and it died. Somehow, it lived among 10 billion tentacles off all those bubble tips and was fine. But when I moved it in the other tank, it died. And I regret moving it. Fish will tend to stay a certain size in a certain body of water. I'm not saying put a tiny tank in a little tiny 13-gallon tank and it'll stay small forever. It won't. It will outgrow that tank. But there is like this weird unwritten rule that certain fish will stay kind of the right size for the tank for a while. Then eventually it will just grow. But if you take that fish out of the smaller tank into the next one, you might see a huge growth spurt. And it's like, boom, it just got bigger, like, wow. And that's normal because it had more space. It just, I don't know, it triggers something and they get larger. But hippo tanks live a long time, and you can definitely enjoy them in different size tanks. I always try to buy small fish. When I got this one, this little angelfish, I literally said, I want the smallest one you have. And she's like, okay. And I'm super happy of what I got. I want it to be small. Now, it will grow. It's so dumb. It's called a pygmy angelfish, and yet it grows to be 6 inches. That is larger than a dwarf angelfish that's mature. And I'm just thinking, well, why would you call it pygmy? I mean, isn't pygmy smaller than dwarf? I don't know. But anyway, when this fish becomes larger, I'm thinking about 3 inches in size, then I'll move it into the reef because I feel like it will be big enough to hold its own against a coral beauty, against vortex pumps. It'll know to avoid certain things that could sting it because it's a bigger, beefier fish. But for now, it's totally safe in a reef that has almost nothing that can sting it, except for maybe those weird appendages that I don't know what they are. Rather be traveling, nice name, says, I have a 3-month-old new tank. I finally added some clowns to it. They are so lost in the tank. It's a 180-gallon tank, and somewhat lost on what to do next. They haven't had the ugly stage yet. Well, the ugly stage may happen. You might get lucky and kind of avoid it. It depends how long you run your lights each day. That is part of it. I think people run their lights too long, especially in a young, immature tank, and it ends up leading to a lot of algae issues and ugly phase. But some ugly is normal. But your little clown's being lost in that huge tank. Yep, but they'll figure it out. They'll be fine, and then they'll find a spot they like to call home. And as you add more things, you'll find that they just fit in perfectly. So congratulations on your new tank. And then he said, any recommendations for the next fish or basic corals? Well, when you say basic corals, you have to decide, are you talking about soft corals? Are you talking about hard corals like LPS? Are you talking about SPS corals? Have you had experience in the hobby, or is this your first tank? Usually soft corals are the choice of a brand new person in the hobby, and they love to get all the things that people that myself have been in the hobby so long we would never put in a tank, because those soft corals grow so fast and so abundantly and fill in so much, they steal all the real estate. And you can't put in the cool things you really like without ripping out huge sections of the other stuff. So if, for example, being specific, green star polyps, mushrooms, leathers, zinnia, these are all things that I would not put in a tank now, because they take up too much real estate. They will literally cover all the rock. They will spread like wildfire. They'll be everywhere, and I can't put anything else in the tank because of them. And I'm constantly trying to cut out, rip out, and remove as much as I can to create more open space. So, you've got a nice big tank. You just have to decide what kind of a look you're looking for. Are you wanting a mixed reef? Are you wanting a species tank, which some people do? Like there's this one famous aquarium in Denver that is all hammer. The whole tank is just one giant mass of hammer coral. And I don't think there's anything in there. Maybe it's some fish, but I mean, it's just one ginormous, huge pizza size. I mean, you can't see my arms because the camera's too close. It's just humongous hammer that's like a decade old or older, and that's it. And it might be boring to most people. It's sort of like having an aquarium with 3 jellyfish tumbling. That would bore me to tears. I can look at it for a minute, maybe 2, and then I'm okay, I'm out. I just don't have any desire to look at that. And when I go to public aquariums, I definitely look at them. I'll try to take a few pictures of them, sometimes successfully, usually not. And then I'm done. Take me to the next thing, because there's just no interaction. There's nothing interesting that's going to happen with them besides them tumbling slowly. It's literally looking at a lava lamp, and I don't have a lava lamp either for similar reasons. And then next fish could be anything. So maybe what you could do is you could start thinking the shape of the fish you like, the colors you're looking for in your tank. You might say, I need a yellow fish. And then you can basically Google yellow saltwater fish and see what exists, and then kind of look at the list and see what gets along with what. So you can kind of plan ahead and not end up putting in things that are a problem. Like one person before, you asked about having a blue tang, which like I said, I think they meant the blue hippo tang. There is another blue tang called the blue Atlantic tang. The blue Atlantic tang grows very large and is super aggressive and not good in a small tank. It'd probably be fine in your tank, but it's aggressive, which means it has to be the last fish you put in your tank, because it'll be a bully to anything new that goes in the tank. So a blue hippo tang, very popular, the dory fish. And if you put that in the tank, put that tang in the tank, you can enjoy it, but you might discover it does things you don't like. It may move frags. It may continually bite at and close up all your zoanthids, which is why I don't have a blue hippo in my reef, because I have zoanthids in there, and I have them in here, so there's no blue hippo in here. But you might say, well, I'd like a fish that stays by the sand. I want to have fish that are swimming up high. You have to decide what kind of creature. Like things that stay near the sand would be gobies, dragonettes, gudgeon, it's a goby, gudgeon gobies. Those tend to stay low, where chromis and fish that are in groups like that would swim up in the water column. Anthias would swim in the water column, so you get to enjoy them. And then, of course, tangs are constantly just circling the entire tank. So if you want to do tangs in your big tank, you need to start determining which ones you want, and then, of course, put in all the friendly ones first, and then the most aggressive one goes in last, like the blue Atlantic I was talking about. You might say, oh, I don't want a blue Atlantic, but I want a Sohal. Put the Sohal in last. You might say, well, I want Achilles or a purple tang. Those go in later. You want to put in your friendly ones first so they can already get a spot called home. And when the new guy comes in, it's not being a jerk to because everything you put in afterwards will be a battle to get it in safely. Your medic says, I know you talked about an issue where you had with some of your salt a while back. It was last year. They didn't have one of the elements, potassium. Do you test your mixed water before each time now? I've always tested my water before, but I tested for all the normal things: alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, salinity, temperature. Those are the 5 I always tested. I never tested for potassium. So when I opened my new barrel of salt last year, I mixed up a batch and I sent it off to ICP, and it came back with good numbers. And I've been using that barrel ever since. And I've got another brand new barrel that I will be cracking the lid on in a couple of months. And when I open that one and make a batch of salt water, I'm going to send off a sample for ICP to verify that my whole barrel is safe, because I had a bad barrel. And that is my method. But I still will test alkaline, calcium, magnesium, because I want to make sure that those numbers match. I want those numbers to be as close to my reef as possible, so when I change the water, the reef isn't affected. And my tank needs a water change really badly, and I need to clean the big 250-gallon poly tank, and maybe I can get it cleaned over this weekend. We'll see. But I need to clean it out completely before I can fill it up with fresh water, because it's been over a year. It's been longer, and it's dirty inside, and I want to start clean. Bradley says, tank looks great, and I love the low-lying open water look. That was on purpose. I wanted a few rocks, but I definitely was hoping I'd see the pygmy angelfish out all the time. And so I wanted to have lots of room for her to swim up high. And a lot of times she'll swim all the way up to here and then come back down. Now, you can't see it from this angle, but the top of this tank is completely covered with an acrylic, actually with a polycarbonate lid with a little access door I can lift off to put food in, and I close it again. And that is so I don't have any jumpers. And the reason I didn't choose to do a screened top is because I'm running an air stone. And the reason I run an air stone is to kind of hide the equipment in the corner so you don't see all the wires and stuff. And the heater. I kind of wanted to hide it. And this is an angle I don't normally see. I'm usually sitting over there, and so the way refraction works, I can't see that corner at all, and all that gear right there is invisible to my eye. But from this angle, you can see the pH probe, you can see the power head, you can see the heater, you can see the air stone, you can see the blue tubing. But anyway, there was a master plan for all of this. But I liked to have the air in the tank because it's got a cover. And I felt like if there's a solid lid on top, I'm going to limit the oxygen exchange. And since there's no filtration, like a hang-on back filter with a bio wheel tumbling or water even tumbling into the tank from the filtration, since there's none of that going on, I needed to make sure I was bringing in fresh air. So I have an air pump. It pushes in fresh air constantly. The solid lid on top keeps all the salt spatter inside, where if it was a screen, the air stone would send spatter, and all my artwork above this and that whole wall behind it would get damaged with salt creep. So my whole lid system has worked out really, really well. And the spot where all the wires come in, all the tubes in that one spot, it's actually a little bit more open than I'd like it. I'm halfway tempted to put something there to kind of button it up a little bit more, because I don't want like this little hell freaky to say, I think I can jump out that tiny sliver of a hole, because that's what fish do. They will find the one spot you did not secure, and they will dart out of it. So we want to make sure that if you do have anything on top of your tank, it really covers everything. There's no reason to cover 80% or 85%. We want to cover it completely if you're trying to avoid having jumpers. This tank is super quiet, and there's no evaporation because of that lid, so I don't have to worry about top off. And I've had a jug of top off here. I've got the stuff to set one up, but there's been zero need. It would almost never top off. Literally a week after when I'm doing the water change, the water level hasn't changed in the tank. So I haven't had the need for top off at all, which is kind of convenient too. One less thing to think about. Paul says, have you ever heard about the 3-year cycle? Nope. Oh, 3-month cycle. Well, okay, so the cycle usually is 21 days. That's how it usually is. Some people may have a really fast cycle where it just seems to be mere days, 3-4 days, and boom, they have no ammonia, and they never saw a measure of nitrite, and nitrate stayed low, and they're like, I guess it cycled. And then others, it could go months. It's kind of weird how that happens, and I'm not really sure why some people have very long cycles versus others having shorter cycles. It might just have been there was only a little bit of ammonia, and it didn't really come high enough to create a full cycle. It's like a mini cycle. And perhaps the ones that took a super long time, maybe there was too much ammonia in the system, like it just crazy spiked high. This tank here kind of spiked during my cycle. I felt like it was getting too high and actually did a water change even though I was in the ammonia period, because I just didn't like the number. It was just going too high and I didn't want to kill off the life on my live rock. And I knew ammonia was going to be bad for life. So I think the number, I wanted around 3 ppm and I think it was heading into 5. I was like, nope. So I changed like 50% of the water, got it back down to 3, and then I let it just ride out, and it worked out just fine. Tim says, I've upgraded my flow from 3 waves in 1 small pump to 5 waves. Do you think that's more than sufficient flow? You didn't say what size the tank is, but I know you can put in as many as you want, and you can run them as fast as you want to create really good dynamic flow. Dwayne's got a bunch of those wave pumps, and he runs them all. I think he runs them all at like 100%, but his whole tank is SPS. So it's going to come down to what kind of livestock you have, because if you have LPS, you can't have super high flow because it tears the polyps right off the skeletons. But SPS can handle a good beating. They really like high flow, and the more turnover in the tank, circulation in the tank, the better. So it's going to be a matter of, do you have any dead spots? If you've eliminated all the dead spots and you're happy with the way everything's looking and the sand is staying clean, and the corals are still moving normally and not looking like they're being shut down or peeled off their skeletons, then you've probably got sufficient flow. And then you said, what mix of types of flow do you think is best? Normally, because just the way we set up our tank, you put in some sand, or maybe you just have a bare bottom tank, and you put in the rock, and then you put your power heads in at different points, either high or low, or in the corner or the front, or you angle them to deflect off the glass and shoot across. The more obstacles in the way, the less flow will travel across the tank. Think about a power head at one end, and it's pushing water straight through an empty tank, just a glass box, right? And you can put your hand here and you can feel the flow hitting your hand. Then you add all your rock and you put your hand here, and as the flow is going across, you might feel little bits of flow, but not much. And then you have some corals grow, and you put your hand there and you feel no flow at all, because all the flow is being hit in the rock and the corals, and there's just nothing left to hit your hand. So at that point, you need a different power head over here, or maybe on this side, blowing the backside of where your hand was, to create a different flow. I like chaotic flow, where you have flow coming from different angles, while others like to have laminar flow, where the water's just moving almost in a circle at all times, just completely rotating around the rockwork, the aquascape, and it's just a continual thing, and the water's moving. But then you may have corals that grow that direction, because the flow's going this way, and they lean into the flow and they grow that way. In my main tank, not only do I just have 3 vortex for my main flow in the tank, I'm using the RFGs that are from VCA, the 3D printed ones. And those literally, they're called RFGs, they're random flow generators. They literally are random. And if you put your hand somewhere in front of the nozzle, you will feel the water hit your thumb, and then you'll feel it hit your palm, and then it hits your pinky or whatever. It just literally moves around. You're like, that is insane how that works, because there's no moving parts. It's just the way the water shoots through the different propeller slivers. It's really neat. And he came out with a new version that's now public. I can talk about it, where they're 3D printed out of rubber. So they flex. And I think they're called RFG Flex or something like that, or Flex RFGs. And I've been running them for a couple of months. And if you stare at them, when I looked at the old RFGs, I would just see the water coming out. I'd see the fitting. I wouldn't see the water, obviously. Water's water. Unless something's going through the water, like Phosphate RX or flake food, or some kind of particulates. Water's just shooting through and you can't really see anything. But with the new Flex RFGs, the whole nozzle is kind of moving because of the way the water's shooting through the center, and then it's picking up the water's flowing in through the sides. That cavitation, that penductor effect, is actually flexing the rubber, and the rubber's moving. It's neat. It's like it's breathing. And now I'm getting even more dynamic random flow in different spots. And the coolest thing, and I shared a video that no one noticed. It was top secret. I couldn't tell you I just posted the video and I wanted to see if there would be any reactions. I have that big hammer colony, and the hammer colony is now doing this movement thing it never did before since changing to the Flex RFGs. It's really neat. And so now when you're watching my videos, we'll put that video back up that we did before. Let's do it again. If you can look really, I know I'm moving the camera. If you look at the hammer really closely, it's shifting a little bit. Let's see if I hold still long enough for you to notice. Nah, I'm moving too much. But maybe toward the end of the video, it'll look like, but the coral is literally shifting back and forth a little bit now. Like there's some kind of a ebb and flow effect. And it's neat, and I've never seen it in my tank before, and I love it. If you're just joining the live stream now or you didn't hear the very beginning of the show, this was filmed today right before the live stream. So this is today's view a couple hours ago. Let me see if there's another question while that's playing. Virginia says, I have some bryopsis in my tank and it's growing within my pulsing zinnia. Is there anything that munches on this algae? My urchins won't, neither will a cleaner shrimp. Nope, the thing that eats bryopsis are lettuce nudibranchs. And you've got to literally take the lettuce nudibranch and put it on the algae. And then the next day you have to go find that nudibranch wherever it is in your tank and put it back on the algae. It may end up down in your sump. It may end up in your refugium. It may be stuck to the side of a power head. And you've got to retrieve it and then put it back. And it's like trying to put a feather on top of algae. It's just a little floaty, delicate, dandelion-looking thing that you can barely hold in your fingers because you don't want to squish it. And you put it down on top of that bryopsis, and it will eat it. That's really the only creature. And then a foxface. That's a fish that literally eats bryopsis. Rather be traveling said, I'm leaning toward SPS and LPS. Well, that's like me. A mixed reef with a tang gang, 5 or so, brain coral sticks. And he said, I want to get the tang gang all at once with them 2 to 3 inches to start all of them. When you're choosing your tangs, to avoid having conflict, it would be best if every single tang was a different shape. So if you get a purple tang and you get a yellow tang, they're the same shape. That could be conflict. But if you get a purple tang and a Nassau tang, different shape, body shape. The Vlamingi, another body shape that's different. The powder blue or powder brown tang is a different body shape. The coal tang seems to get along with everyone, so that one won't be a factor. If you get, that's a great fish, by the way. The coal tang would be great in your tank because it's constantly cleaning. It's a workhorse. It goes through and it will be kissing the glass to get the algae off of it. It'll be nibbling on the rock. It'll be grabbing mouthfuls of sand a little bit to kind of get stuff. It's always nipping at stuff and helping keep the tank clean. Super love the coal tang. For my own tank right now, I have the coal, I've got the Nassau, and I've got a yellow. And I'm planning to get an Achilles tang, and that'll be my last tang in this tank. Tammy's here. Hi, Tammy. Are you trucking right now, or are you relaxing? Tech HR says, is that a Nero 3? Nope, that's the Nero 5. I have, to this day, only seen a Nero 3 once at a trade show, and it wasn't even for sale. I think those are really hard to come by. Lee says, how thick of a polycarbonate makes for a sturdy lid? I used 1/4 inch. And first I made the lid with my little access door, and then I got the light like a week later. And then I had to take it off, and I had to put it back on my CNC to cut out the spot for where the light bracket would be. And then recently I had to take the lid off, and I had to drill a hole in there for the pH probe because I wanted to put it through the top instead of having it dangling in the tank, as it was kind of irritating me. It just didn't look like it belonged. And no, it's worked out really, really well. Thank you, Antonio. The RFG Flex series. So yeah, those are really neat. Mine are dirty now. I can finally put them in acid, Antonio, and tell you if they melt. He tells me, he says, put it through all kinds of chemicals and let's see what happens. And I'm just like, it's clean. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not touching it. but now they're kind of getting grody. So now would be a good time to throw it in muriatic acid and see what happens. I'm sure it'll be fine. Tammy says she's enjoying her day off, going to Milwaukee for MACNA next Wednesday. Awesome. So I leave on Thursday, and then I'll be back the following Monday, which means there's no live stream next weekend because I will be at MACNA soaking up the knowledge and hoping you'll be there with me. So if you have not decided to go to MACNA and you're somewhere near it, you should go. I mean, drives me crazy when local people, especially local club members, don't go to the event that's in their town and then later on say, oh, well, if I had known it was this big a deal, I would have gone. You gotta go. It's such a good show to go to, and it's worth every penny. And you're gonna, it's not there, it's not a frag swap, it's not a place to go buy a bunch of corals and get out. This is literally a place to learn and hang out with others and listen and absorb knowledge. And of course you can buy some corals if you want. I've gone to MACNA and came home with corals and clams. I've seen others come home with fish and seahorses and aquacultured stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can buy, but the show is 3 days long. And you can buy equipment, you can buy livestock, you can wait till the last day to pick it up, then you still got to deal with getting through TSA, and you got to deal with your luggage and all that. And if you're local, you go home and you put it in your tank. It's so much easier. So I always tell people to go. And when we planned our own MACNA, when I was in charge of the 2012 MACNA here in Fort Worth, well, Dallas, I begged the club members. We had like 600 to 800 club members. I begged them weekly, go to MACNA. Just go. Just trust me. Just buy your ticket and show up. That's all I ask. You're going to love it. And I spent like 18 months telling my club members to go. And then it was on Sunday. I mean, I was so worn out, because we spent every waking moment getting ready. Plus, I was a vendor. I had my own booth. I was a speaker. I had to give a talk. I had so much to do with that show, and I was so tired. And it was Sunday morning. I was walking across, the vendor hall, and this one person walked up and goes, "Hey, Mark, yeah, we decided to come today." And they're looking around like, "Man, I had no idea it was this big a deal. I would have come Friday and Saturday too if I'd known this." And I just wanted to strangle them. I was so mad. I was like, I've spent 3 years planning this event so that you can have a great time, and then you choose to, I guess we'll just show up on Sunday and check it out for a couple of hours. This is not a couple of hours thing. This is a thing where you go and you put down your roots and you hang out. And then in the evening, you can go to the bar and listen to more reef keeping stuff. And you can go out to dinner, you can do whatever you want, but I tend to stay in the hotel the whole time or in the convention area the whole time as much as I possibly can. And then I just go to the hotel long enough to go to sleep and take a shower and start all over again. But I am, I don't want to go off and see the sights in the town. A lot of people do that and I don't. But some people come with their spouses and their spouse wants to go do something. So I understand you got to keep everyone happy. But it's really there with so much information and there's so little time. And I think about it, the vendor hall and the speakers, there may be 6 to 8 hours a day. So you have 24 hours of opportunity to soak it all up before it's gone. And then you got to wait a whole year, and it's in a totally different town. So you definitely want to go whenever you can, if it's close enough to you. And this one is going to be next Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Wisconsin. Go to macna.org or macna.com. I never know. I just type it in Google and it finds it for me. You'd think I'd know, but whatever. And you'll have a great time. Let's see. Yes, Tyler, that is a hell freaky firefish. She's so pretty. Let's see. Antonio says it'll hold up in the acid. He says you can actually use warm water and flex the nozzle a bit, and coralline will flake off. I don't have coralline on mine. I just have gunky, filmy, browny, algae-looking stuff. So I'm sure a toothbrush would be fine, but I love to soak things in acid. Julian says, I wish we had shows in the UK. There's a couple that come from Australia. I know it's not UK. They come from Australia, and they come to America for like 2 months for MACNA. So they come early, and they drive across the US, and they visit all the sites that us Americans never go see. And then they go to MACNA, and then they continue their thing, and then they finally go home. I don't know how they can afford it, but they do it every single year. And they're good friends of mine, and I love seeing them. So You know, I'm not saying you have to buy an international flight, but people have done it. A friend of mine from Saudi Arabia, Adnan, he was on an escalator behind me one time years ago, and he says, "Excuse me," and I turned around, and he's like, "Are you Mark Levinson?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "From Milev and Milev's Reef?" Like, "Yeah." He says, "I'm here because you told me I have to come," and I was like, "Wow." And he says, "I'm here from Saudi Arabia," and I was like, "Wow." And he's gone every year ever since. It's yes, you should go. But I understand, you know, there's only so many days in the week and all this kind of thing, but MACNA's once a year, and I always recommend people go. Rather Be Diving says, looking for a link, just type it in. It's easy. Yeah, there you go. You already found it. Let's see. Plaid Joker asked a great question. We're going to make this our last question of the day. He said, have you ever used blue velvet slugs for flatworms? You know, we had one that someone was selling in the club, and I had flatworms in my tank. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Not only will I get this velvet nudibranch, I will then get great pictures of it, so I can put it on my Creature ID on my website, and I get to watch them suck up all these flatworms. I'm like, this is win-win. And I drove like an hour to this guy's house to pick up this little tiny thing, and then I came home and I put it in my little tiny tank, which was a 20-gallon tank, and I watched it go onto the rocks, like, okay, that's cool, and then never saw it again. Never saw it again. Never got a picture of the darn thing. I mean, it was just gone. I was like, man. And no, it did not eat all the flatworms. It just vanished. The flatworms ate it. I don't know. But no, they are supposed to do it. And if I ever end up with flatworms, maybe I'll get me one of those so I can actually get some video of it happening, because those are really cool critters and they do work. All right, we're going to wrap this up with water testing. I tell you guys every week, and even when I'm not doing a live stream, you should hear me ringing in your ears on Saturdays. It's Water Test Saturday. We want to test our water and verify what the parameters are on your tank. You want to check all of the things: alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, phosphate, nitrate. If your tank's young, ammonia. We want to know the pH of the tank. We want to know the temperature of the tank. We want to know TDS of our salt water. I'm sorry, of our ODI water. We want to know that our salinity is correct for the salt water. We want to know that everything's right. Because if anything's wrong, we want to catch it early before things go wrong in the reef. We want to catch it before the corals react, before the fish swim funny. And if you're staying on top of it, if you're steering this giant ship, you'll never hit the iceberg. But if you just blindly say everything's fine, the corals look good, fish look fine, then when you slam into an iceberg and everything's going wrong, what are you going to do? You're going to test the water. And now you got to figure out what is really wrong, and you have to start fixing with big solutions, where if you had just checked it regularly like you're supposed to, you can make minor adjustments and the tank never skips a beat, and you don't have to wait 8 to 12 weeks for the tank to recover. So water tests save lives. It's appropriate to say that in front of Caitlin's tank because she came up with the phrase. And I highly recommend that you do your water testing every single Saturday. If your kits are old, buy new ones. Test your water. Save your results in a spreadsheet or in an app like Reef Trace on your phone. And that way you can track your data and you can see where things are going. I've got a full spreadsheet because I've been doing ICP testing weekly for a couple of months, and I have a lot of data. So I'm going to encourage you to do the same. Keep track of all your numbers and make sure that everything is dosing properly. Make sure your dosing solutions aren't low or run out. Make sure that your tubing hasn't clogged up to where nothing comes out. That's my signal to end the show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And like I said, no show next week, but I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.